everybody! I need to move over. Happy Friday! Yes, so for anybody, when Corvus gets on, I need to tell her, because the Trader Joe's gluten-free English muffins are actually good. Like, I don't really want to do a side-by-side comparison with a real English muffin because migraine, and also I know that I would inevitably be disappointed, but as someone who's been gluten-free for many years, so that the taste of things have faded a little bit from my memory, they are solid. That egg and goat cheese and English muffin sandwich this morning was so good. Hi, Corvus! Hello, hello. Okay, gluten-free English muffins at Trader Joe's are good. Just FYI. I had one this morning, toasted with goat cheese and a fried egg, and it was so good. Actually, technically it was an over medium egg. Like, it was mostly solidified and then the yolk was a little bit runny. Oh my god, it was so good. So anyway, welcome to... Yeah, considering that isn't Trader Joe's a European... Didn't they start in Europe?
I don't know if they started in Europe.
Anyway, it's unfortunate that there's not an analog. Because they are, though I for years, whilst living in Texas, there were no Trader Joe's here in Texas. And so anytime I would go to visit Arizona or, okay, Aldi started in
Yes.
Europe. Okay. Every time I would go to visit Arizona or Milwaukee or Chicago, I would, especially Arizona, because I would drive, at that point I was driving there, so I would just load up on non-perishables and like drive it back. And thankfully now we have Trader Joe's right across the street from us, so it's super fun. Also a little bit dangerous. The only thing that really saves my wallet most of the time is that usually they close before we get off work. So, welcome to Teeny Tiny Stud Earrings, and this is a class I've done before, but I'm going to present it a little bit differently tonight. I'm going to do more of a... So, what I did have done in the previous sessions of this class is I basically presented it how a hobbyist jeweler would do it. I've done a lot of kind of researching and brushing up my skills over the past 6 months or so, and so I have actually a more jewelry way to do it now. Jeweler-y, like the way a properly trained jeweler would do it, because I am not, just, you know, disclaimer that I really should give more often, I'm not a classically trained, properly trained, or really trained at all jeweler. Pretty much everything that I know I've either picked up from a class here, class there, or you know, through knowledge exchanges with people that I work with. No, didn't need to know that, Corvus. But anyway, so I'm going to show you a little bit more of a technical way to make the little stud earrings as opposed to the way that we have done it in the past. And there's no wrong, there's no right. It is wrong that I forgot my disc cutter over there, but I'll go grab that in a minute. But, oh, thank you, Caro, you're the best. Look! Is a disc cutter delivered to me by a Caro. So anyway, so I'm going to make these cute little stud earrings, and there's no wrong way to make them. So there's nothing wrong with the way that I did it before. And there's nothing righter about the way I'm going to do it now. Just giving you two different options. This one requires more equipment, which is another reason why the other one is more of a hobbyist thing, because it requires less specialized equipment. So, we're going to be making teeny tiny stud earrings. We're going to be doing them on sterling, so I've got a little piece of sterling sheet metal. I've got a stamp. Did it involve a goat? Good vibes. Did they let the goats into the hospital? Because that's not okay. Okay, well, I've got a stamp. It's a little snaky snake. I've got metal to practice on, and I'm actually going to show you something about this particular stamp that's interesting and a little annoying, but I like the little snaky, super cute, so I'm going to use it anyway. I've got my disc cutter that Carol brought me. I've got my soldering station, so my soldering blocks, and I've got my torch. I have an assortment of tweezers and solder picks here within arm's reach, so that I theoretically don't burn myself. By the way, it has been a solid 2 weeks without an incident. I think. Yeah. I know, right? Knock on wood. And yeah. Well, okay, so I guess that could be construed as an appropriate percentage to take. We all knocked on all the woods. All of us. All of the beading dreamsers, all of the woods were knocked upon. Okay, so and then I've got various other things. I've got 2 different kinds of hammers, and I'll talk to you a little bit about those as well. And I've got a block of wood for just bracing my thing when I thank you, good vibes. Because, Julie, I have no respect for fate, obviously. But anyway, okay, so let's talk a little bit about, let's start with talking a little bit about stamping. Okay, so I have my stamp, and I have my sheet metal, and then I got 2 different types of hammers here, and I'll show you both of them on the face cam. So this is a brass hammer, and you'll notice how marred up the head is. So the brass hammer is a lot softer, or not a lot softer, but it's noticeably softer than the tool steel that my stamp is made from, so it nicks up my hammer a lot. So why would one use a hammer that is going to get messed up by the steel of the stamp? And the answer is, this is called a dead blow hammer, because since it is softer than the tool steel, it doesn't bounce. So when you hit it, it really seats and hits. Also, this hammer is heavy AF. Heather knows, because it's fallen towards her more than once.
Yep.
I don't know how much it weighs, but it's
enough.
Yeah, enough. It's got to be as heavy as one of your physical therapy hammers, at least.
Oh,
so,
easily, yeah.
So this was a gift from a client along with this disc cutter, and I love this. These things are amazing. Expensive for one trick pony, because obviously I can't hammer metal with this because it's all gnarfed up, and would even get more gnarfed with the metal. And you know, if you have a full-on metal shop, you can. Oh no! Well, what happens when goats break into the pig area? I feel like that emoji says that's not good.
That sounds like chaos.
But if you have a full-on metal shop, you can also resurface this hammer fairly easily, periodically, if you need to. The other hammer I have is just one of my all-purpose hammers. This is a little tack hammer that I love. It was actually my grandfather's. So this is a steel hammer. So it's not going to get dinged up by this tool steel of the stamp, but since it's the same hardness, it has a little bit more rebound, which sometimes makes it harder to stamp. So I'm going to use the big ass brass hammer tonight. And so this is a stamp that, oh right, I need that mouse. Oof. That's unfortunate. Goats and geese, animals of chaos. Okay, so this is my little snaky stamp that I bought off of Etsy. I believe it was made in Russia, and it's a super cute little snake, and I was really excited about it, but something about the way it's tooled, it doesn't stamp easily, which is unfortunate. So I was practicing with it before stream tonight, and I kept getting these impressions that are very sad and incomplete. So finally I tried a technique called tap and rock, which is usually only used with larger stamps, but that's what I had to do to get a good impression with my snake. So tap and rock basically means that you're going to take your stamp and you're going to set it on your metal, which is on your steel bench block. Okay, don't try and do this on like a wooden counter, because you're not going to get any impression at all. All you're going to get is a dinged up counter. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit, so normally when I tell you to stamp, when I teach stamping, I say hit one solid blow dead center. I am not going to do that. I'm going to hit multiple blows, and while I'm hitting the multiple blows, I'm going to kind of rotate this around, you know, obviously trying to pivot it around a central point, because what I don't want to do is I don't want to make multiple impressions. So we're going to try this once on the brass, and then I'm going to grab the silver. So Heather, I am hammering now. Okay, so I'm going to hammer and I'm going to tap and rock. So And there we go. We have a little snaky. He's a little bit impressed into the metal, which isn't ideal. So what I would do in this instance is grab a rawhide mallet or a nylon mallet and just give it a tap from the back to just bring it back to being flush with the metal. Okay, so I'm pretty confident in my technique for this. So now I'm going to go to my sterling, and I want to make sure, let's see, what size am I going to use? I think I'm going to use this one. So this is real convenient for me because I have cut from this sheet of metal obviously something with this size of the disc cutter before. So that means that I can use this to give me an approximate idea of where to stamp my little snakes so that I will be able to cut them out and get full circles and not have weird truncated circles, because nobody likes a truncated circle. Oh, why do I have every tool on the planet except for a marker? Wait, oh, I bet Sam put my markers in here. Okay, well, I have a China marker, that'll work. I'm gonna just use my cutout holes as, okay, on camera, Allison, there we go. I'm gonna use my cutout holes as a template, and since I am a jeweler, we are notoriously parsimonious, I am going to get this as close as possible. So notice that obviously because my China marker is really thick, that circle is much smaller than my cutout is going to be, so that's fine as long as I know that. You know, I've got to allow about a 1.5 millimeter margin of error before I go to my second one, which is totally fine, as long as you're aware of that. Look. Okay, I'm not happy with that. I need a better thingy. I'm going to have to put on my big girl panties and use a scribe. I do not like scribing lines because if you screw up, they're still there. Yeah. But I think in this instance I'm going to have to, because see how much thinner this is that I'm going to use to scribe with, and it's going to give me a much more accurate picture of where I need to stamp. Alright, there we go. Okay, so now I have my 2 scribed circles. Everyone pray for me. Keiko is also an agent of chaos, easily distracted by food. That's fair.
Same. Definitely same.
I don't know that I'm an agent of chaos. I feel like I'm not that cool. Alright, so now I'm going to stamp. So, since I've scribed these, I need to be a little bit more precise than I would normally be with where I position. So I'm going to position my snake stamp in the middle of one of my scribed circles. I'm going to hold it firmly. I'm going to grab my big ass hammer. Make sure I didn't move it when I did that. I don't think I did that much. Alright, and then I'm going to tap. By tap, I mean pound and rock. Alright. Uno snake. Second snake. Oh, bad snake. No bueno snake. Look at that. I totally missed his head. So here's
Headless snake.
here's the cool thing about this is you can, with a design stamp, you can usually kind of feel it slot back in there, and this may be a terrible idea, but we're going to try it anyway. Alright, yes, 2 snakes, both with heads. I realize that's not the way that some people like their snakes, but in this particular instance, and I'm just gonna, and then I'm gonna tap those babies down flat, like so. Alright, so I've got 2 snaky snakes. Now I'm gonna switch to my disc cutter. And again, I will forever and ever just say how amazing this disc cutter is, and how fabulous a tool it is, and how much, hi Silver, also hi Ace, I said that in my head but I don't think I said it out loud, how great a tool this is, and I will say that cheap disc cutters are worth nothing, they're awful. So if you're gonna get a disc cutter, get yourself an expensive one, otherwise you're gonna be like me. For years, I thought I hated disc cutters. I thought they were the worst tool ever. Maybe not the worst tool ever, but really up there.
Useless.
Yeah, and then we got this one. I was like, this is amazing. This is what everyone was talking about. I don't know why I have to say it like that, but now I'm going to take my little stamp snake and I'm going to center it in the slot for the die that I'm going to use. So okay, our store did have bronze sticks, so there is chaos, it's true. I did not facilitate the bronze sticks though, I'm just saying. Okay, I need to actually look down at this one, so. So the disc cutter has a handle here, and you turn it. You turn that to tighten the plates together to hold what you're doing, and then you take your cutter, your actual punch, put it in the hole. It's always so you'll notice, and this is another thing with cheapy ass disc cutters that that is not a thing, and this helps a lot. So this end is slightly angled, it's not flat, and that facilitates the cutting. So I'm just going to drop that in the hole, and I'm going to take my brass hammer and I'm going to pound it. Usually about 3 good hits will do it, and there I have my 1 snaky. Then I'm going to reposition. Alright, and my scribe lines were definitely off, so we are going to give these guys a sanded finish to hide that. Alright, and that should be all of the hammering for tonight, so Heather went and took a phone call, but we will thank her for being so tolerant of me hammering all up in our workspace. Okay, so now I'm done with the disc cutter. So this is what I mean about, you know, it's an expensive tool. The good ones are expensive. If you don't cut a lot of discs, then, you know, it's probably not worth it. You can cut discs with a circle. They're not as nice. You can also buy pre-cut discs. Alright, tidying as we go. Okay, so now let's talk about the more technical part of this. And I'm not going to sand these until I've got the posts on, because I want to have something to hang on to while I'm sanding. So what I did before was I used what's called a pad post on the backs of these, and so it's literally an earring post with a little flat disc on it. You can solder it right to the silver, and like I said, there's nothing wrong with that, but I'm going to show you how a jeweler would do it in this case. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with 20 gauge sterling silver wire for my earring posts, and I'm going to cut my wire. And what would be really cool is if I had a standard length earring post to measure off of, which I do in my ear. So I'm going to cut my wire to the same length as the post on the earring that I was wearing. And there, you'll usually get like 2 sizes of earring posts, the short ones and long ones, so these are a little on the short side. But you can really make your earring posts as long as you want or as short as you want. Because again, having been in the business for quite a number of years, some people have skinny ears and some people have fat ears. Like, there's no way to get around, like, some people saying, why are all your earring posts so short? And some people saying, why are all your earring posts so long? So you just kind of, you go with it. But if you are making for yourself, the cool thing is you can customize them. Alright, so I've got myself 2 pieces of wire that are ideally the same size, except for the fact that they're definitely not even close to the same size. I mean, they're close, they're just not the same size. Okay, so now I've got my 2 pieces of 20 gauge wire, one stuck in my fingers, and now I'm going to go ahead and file one end of these flat. You can do that fairly easily with some sandpaper, or I'm just going to move these for a minute. I'm going to take my flat file and I can just rest it on my wood block and just take one end, file it the right direction, and I'm just trying to blunt it and make it flat so that I can solder it on. So, and make sure when you put it down that you know which end you filed, because that's the end you're going to solder. Yes, you could put this in a ring clamp, but I'm doing it the stupid way because that's how I roll. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little seat for these, and to do that I'm going to use a very, very small ball burr. So it's a little burr, and it's called the ball burr because it is because it's shaped like a ball. You could use a bud burr for this, but a ball burr is better because we're just trying to make some place for it to seat so that the solder has a little bit more contact area rather than just tacking it onto the surface. I do like to stupid proof my stuff as much as possible, so I'm going to make myself a little dot in the middle. Not with that though. And I could use a template if I wanted to. I am just going to eyeball it. And since I'm making this centered, since I'm putting the post centered on the studs, it doesn't really matter which direction my snakes are facing at this point because it's all even. If I were doing something like an oval stud or a shaped stud, it would be important to note which direction my design was facing before I made my depression for my ear wires or earring posts. So I'm going to put those aside, and I'm going to grab my rotary tool, and I'm just going to take this drill bit out of it, and I'm going to load my ball burr into it. And turn it on. So all I'm trying to do here, again, is I'm trying to just make a little depression that my post can sit into. Now, if I were a smart girl, I'd be wearing gloves, but I'm not. I'm just going to come straight down at this though with my ball burr and hit it on my mark. Oh, and never hurts to put some lubricant on your burr because that way it won't slide around like mine just did. So you're not trying to make a hole through the thing. And so this one, since I didn't put the lube on it, it skittered a bit. You can see, yeah, you can see there's a line there, but you can also see, I hope, that there's a little depression there. See that little dot in the middle? That's actually a depression made by the bulber, and that's where we're going to put our post. Alright, so here we go. Alright, so that's it for the bulber. We're going to come back to the rotary tool in a minute after we've soldered with the cup burr to round out our earring posts. So now I'm going to grab my soldering setup and I'm going to set these on my soldering block, which has seen better days. Also, I did not get that one even close to centered, so please don't judge me for that. So that I'm going to flux these babies, and I want them to be flat and level as much as possible. Oh, come on, stop being a pain. I hate it when the tip of my flux gets all clogged up with gunk and then I can't get the flux out. That wire's too big. Okay, well, you know what? When your equipment is malfunctioning, improvise. So I'm just going to put a drop on each of those. And this is my newly, my liquid flux, of which I have a newly found affection. And so I'm going to, alright, make sure my earring posts are at the ready. They're over here to the side of my soldering station. I'm going to grab some solder, and I like to use easy just because the earring posts like to melt, but you could use medium if you were a little bit better with your torch than I sometimes am. And then I'm just going to cut myself 2 little pieces. Don't need to be big, just 2 tiny pieces of solder. And I'm going to set those onto my larger solder board that's here because I'm going to flux those, and I'm going to pick transform over, and then I'm going to put my earring posts on there. And you could either use the tweezers to hold your earring posts, or they will. Yes. They will solder together just fine, because even though I say very often that solder does not flow across a gap, that's not actually true. This solder will flow across a tiny gap, just not a big one. But what the depression does is it actually allows, first of all, for a little more steadiness with the hand in doing it, and then it allows for the solder to create kind of a cup around the bottom of your post. And then you can use tweezers, or I'm going to use a hemostat to hold my pieces, and I have 2 hemostats, so guess what? I'm going to put 1 in each hemostat, but you could stop and switch midstream if you wanted to. So I just have my posts stuck in my hemostats, and first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to switch my camera view. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is that's not the right camera. That's not the right camera either. Hey, there's the right camera. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is this in focus? Because this should be in focus. I did not do a good job of focusing this. So the first thing I'm going to do is fix this so that y'all can see what I'm doing. Okay, so hopefully that's a little bit better. So I've got my flux on there. It's a pretty big puddle of flux. So what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to take my torch and I'm going to burn that off and evaporate most of the moisture from it, because otherwise what's going to happen when I put my solder on is it's just going to flip it right off, which is a pain in the neck. So I'm going to light my torch. My torch is still broken, so we are going old school. Not quite as old school as a Cricut, but I hate those damn things as much as Julie does. So I'm just going to, right now, I'm just going to heat my flux, see it boiling, and eventually it's going to get crusty like that. Okay, so that's the state I want it to be at. I'm going to do the same over here. Alright, then I'm going to go grab one of my pieces of solder on my solder pick. So again, I just melted my solder into a ball and scooped it up on my pick. And then I'm going to melt this up to the point where I can see that depression that I made. I'm going to drop my solder in there. So, there it is. Alright, so I'm just going to drop that there. Ish. I don't think you're actually in there. And do the same thing on the other one. God, I did such a bad job on that one. It's so terrible. This one is so incredibly off-center. It's pretty horrifying. Okay, and so then I'm going to take my first hemostat, and I'm just going to hold it. Remember, do not point the flame at your hand. And I'm going to hold it in that depression, and I'm just going to heat till my solder flows. Bingo. There we go. And set that aside, and then do the same with my other one. I have some thoughts about this one. I don't know if I actually got the solder on that one, so I'm just going to put a little bit of another piece of solder on there. Just because I would much rather have too much than not enough. Because if there's not enough, then it don't stay together. So I'm just going to take a teeny beeny extra piece of solder, and because I have a sneaky suspicion that what's holding this together right now is just the flux, and that is not something that is a long-lasting connective anything. So therefore we need actual solder, and so since I have doubts, I'm just going to hedge my bets and throw a little tiny bit of extra solder on there, which I could have used a tweezers to position had I been thinking. So I'm just going to plop that little baby there. The problem is, you will. Okay, so now here's the problem with the fact that my torch doesn't light itself anymore. Okay. Alright, there we go. Tools are good. Okay, now I'm just going to, son of a bitch, and then it's just going to fly right off anyway, like a stupid thing. So I'm just going to take that, and I just heated that until that piece of solder flowed. So I know now for sure that there is solder in there holding everything together. So now I've got my two snaky posts, wherever you are, that are soldered, and here's a fun trick. If you happen to have a piece of steel and you put your hot pieces on it, it will leach away the heat faster than if you just try and air cool them, which if you're teaching a class is super helpful because you can get to your next steps much more quickly. Now at this point what I would probably do is I would either throw them in the pickle or throw them in the tumbler and leave for the night, but again, since we're teaching a class, we are going to go ahead and we're going to finish them with some sandpaper. And yeah, finish them with some sandpaper and then round out the ends with our cup burr. So, are you cool enough to touch? You are cool enough to touch, are you? Okay, good. So, now, I'm going to grab a ring clamp. Man! Sit there. It's a really pretty impression die that I bought, and I don't have a hydraulic press. I'm not good. I don't have any lead, so I can't do it with a hammer. It was a late night purchase, and I should have researched before I bought it, but it's so pretty. Okay, so I'm going to take one of my snakies. I'm just going to put it in my ring clamp. So this is a ring clamp. Pretty simple device. You just squeeze this end together, take the wedge, throw it in the other end. Make sure that it's in there securely, like so. And then that'll help you do things like sanding and whatnot, and save your fingers. So I'm going to take that and I'm just going to sand. There it is. So I'm just going to sand the surface of that. So the other reason I decided to do a sanding finish is the circles that I scribed were not as precise as they could have been, and so I want to get rid of those scribe lines as well. And I like satin finish. The other cool thing about sanding it instead of pickling or tumbling it is you don't really have to oxidize it to get, you know, emphasis on the stamped design, because you just don't sand off that oxide because it's below the surface of the metal. Why are you scared of crickets? I mean, they're kind of gross, but don't come to Texas at certain times of the year, because they're just like cricket herds. And you can also brace this either against your bench pin or against your workstation to give you a little bit more kind of leverage. You could also do this with sanding disc if you were so inclined. And also finishing it with sandpaper has the dual purpose of triple purpose? Oh, fire starting crickets. Yes. They are, every time I see someone who's just like, chink, I'm like, fuck you. It's not that easy. I love the little zappy fire starters. Those are my fave. Okay, so the reason I'm having a little bit of problem here is because I had, since I had to do the tap and rock with the big hammer, is, see that shadow there? It's because my little snake is impressed a little bit further down into my metal than I thought. So I may run out of patience in a minute and grab a sanding disc. But anyway, so finishing with sandpaper like this does a couple of things. First of all, it will, I'm going to take my glasses off and then decide I want to change the camera frame. First of all, it'll finish your edges for you as well. You might have to hit them with a little bit of steel wool afterwards, but you're not going to have to do a whole lot of intense edge finishing if you are sanding the entire surface, because it'll just kind of roll over and it'll get the edges. Like I said, number 2, it will eliminate your scribe lines if they were less than perfect. And number 3, I can't remember. Oh, you get automatic oxidation. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with this. So this is that's my snake. There's really no way to block that out, is there? There, no, come on, you were so close to focusing, camera. Focus. Nope-is. Okay, so we're gonna do this one. So you can see, oh God, you can see that I closed everything, minimized everything. Okay, so once again, you can see that my snake is dark, and so I didn't have to apply any additional oxide to make it so, because all I did was took off the oxide from the initial creation of it. I will say that on the back, you know, all of this fire scale, I would probably not try and take off by hand. I would grab like a yellow wheel or a blue wheel on my flex shaft, and I would buff that off. Or once again, you can just throw it in the tumbler and then re-oxidize it and sand it later. See how off-center that is? Look at that. Oh my god, that's so bad. It's terrible. Okay, so it's so bad, y'all. Center and I did not get along on that one. Alright, so I'm going to see if I can do a quick job of sanding this other little snaky, and then we are going to... No, it's Fire Friday now. Freeform Saturday. Which means I need to figure out what I'm doing tomorrow. And hi, Diane! Okay, so I'm going to try and sand this one with a little bit more alacrity than I did the other one. I know watching me sand is like the highlight of y'all's evening. I am working on studs. It's getting cold now. It's another reason I want to finish this up and get out of here, because I did not dress for the cold weather. I looked at the weather forecast this morning and then promptly forgot all about it. One of the other reasons I do like to sand by hand if it's not too odious is because this impression's a little uneven. So see, I've sanded down. I'm starting to actually sand away the detail on the snake itself. So I'm going to go ahead and just concentrate on up by its head. So I'm sanding the studs that I made because I didn't do a great job of scribing my circles. So I decided to give them a sanded finish to make my scribe marks go away. So little sneaky snakes. So close. I just want to get the definition of the... okay, this camera position is terrible for this, but I just want to get the definition of the head. So it's just all kind of muddy up there. Very close. Alright, we're going to call that good enough for stream. What I will probably do is maybe go back in there with a blue wheel and just clean that up a bit. But that is those are my two little snaky studs. So I'm pretty happy with the way those look. This one here, still a little shadowy around his head, but all in all, I'm fairly pleased. Now the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to round out the ends of my ear posts, and like I said, I'm going to take a blue wheel to this back to get rid of all this crap. Which I can do that now if anybody wants to see it. Just need to go grab a blue wheel. You can probably get a blue wheel. changed my mind. Yellow wheel, coarser than a blue wheel. These are amazing. Again, if you do have a flex shaft or a rotary tool, you are fabricating. These are called radial bristle discs. And this particular one is Dedico yellow wheel, but 3M also makes them, and they're very good, like life-changingly good for polishing. So I'm just going to put that in there, and then I'm going to turn on my tool. And again, if I were a wise person, I'd be wearing gloves, because what can happen is the edge of this, if you're not careful, can cut you. So I'm going to try to be careful, but it pretty quickly will just strip that oxide off. Like, see, now it's shiny. And I'm just going to use it on my post as well. And so pretty quickly I get a fairly clean finish on the back. A little bit of stubborn flux on there, but I can deal with that later. So yeah, so there's snaky number 1, and we're going to do snaky number 2. Yeah, I love my radial bristle discs. They're so fantastic. So useful. Do not know how I lived my life before them. Okay, so those are reasonably well cleaned up. So now we're going to turn to our last burr of the night, which is going to be our cup burr. So this is wee bitty small, and I don't know if it's going to really show on camera a little bit. So it's literally a little cup with teeth on the inside. And this is what you use to round out the ends of wire. If you have that bead world, you know, the posts I made from 20 gauge wire, Diane. That's why we're rounding them out now. If you get them prefabricated, you can skip the next 2 steps. But if you have that tool called a wire rounder that is popular in the beading world, it's really just a cup burr that somebody mounted into a handle. So I'm just going to take my cup burr to the end of my wire and just kind of rotate that around to smooth it out. So the best way to use a cup burr is just like directly insert your wire in it, and then just kind of stir it around in like a horizontal motion. So I'm not doing too much angling, wiggling. And they make cup burrs in all different sizes, of course, for all different applications. This is a fairly small one because my wire is fairly small. And then the last thing that you're going to do if you're not using prefab earring posts is you're going to take your round nose pliers and you're going to make that little stop for the back. And that's going to just be about 1 millimeter down, and you're just going to gently squeeze your pliers, not enough to cut through your wire, and then you're going to rotate 90 degrees and you're going to squeeze again, and that's going to give you that little notch in the end of your earring post. And my earring post is a little crooked, so we're going to go ahead and straighten that out as well, like so. And then this one, I could actually straighten it first if I wanted to. And then again, squeeze, rotate, squeeze, and there's your little stop. And then you can put just your standard earring backs on these. So there we go. That is teeny tiny studs start to finish, using the techniques that most jewelers and actually properly trained artisan metal fabricators would use to put them together. I will say, and the fact that there's still flux residue on the back of here makes this a little bit less apparent than it should be, but you can see that there's no big pad on your post, so it's a cleaner look in the back. Plus, I can tell you just, okay, it's so sad. You are my redheaded stepchild. Awful, not awful. You are my special snaky. You are my special snaky snowflake. The redheaded joke was not appropriate, and I apologize for that. But yes, this is my special snaky snake. But hey, handmade. You gotta take the good with the bad. But anyway, so also 20 gauge wire is a lot cheaper than prefabricated pad posts for sure, and even prefabricated earring posts, though the time spent with the cup burr and making the little notches on the end may or may not be worth it depending on how many of these you're making. So yes, ta-da! That is it. We have one pair of teeny tiny snaky stud earrings. Look at those. They're cute. And again, I didn't have to do any extra finishing on the edges because I did that sanding finish. If you don't want to do a sanding finish, you could just sand the edges. You can do some steel wool. You can polish them to a satin finish with your yellow wheel or your blue wheel, or you can polish them to a high shine using rouge and a buffing wheel. So there are lots of different ways you can present this particular style. But yeah, so that's teeny tiny stud earrings. They're very cute and very fun to make. I don't make enough of these because I do quite enjoy them, and they're really pretty easy. So thank you all so much for hanging out with us on Fire Friday. So I filed so the wire I cut to length. I filed one end of it flat. I made a depression in the back of my stud with a ball burr, and then I soldered the wire flat side down into that depression. And then I rounded out the ends with my cup burr just now, but I could have done it with a file as well. So yeah, that's start to finish stud earrings. So thank you all so much for hanging out. Oh, dang it, we didn't draw. We didn't. Okay. All right. So we are going to have a deathmatch drawing tomorrow. No, we're gonna have a deathmatch drawing later tonight. We'll post on Discord what the ingredients were that were drawn. It's not right out of my head, because I had to get all those ingredients together for tomorrow. So don't forget, Crafting Deathmatch tomorrow at 6 p.m. on this channel, twitch.tv/Beading Dream. Heather and I go head to head, and we'll be judged by a jury of our peers. So thank you all so much for hanging out, and everyone have a great evening. So I'll see you all back on this channel with Heather, twitch.tv/Beading Dream tomorrow at 6 p.m. Okay, bye.